Now, I talked about the medical records 2 posts ago when I was talking about identity products and the financial transaction grid. But I want to point out here that there are specific ideas that I have for how we incorporate an evolution in social media. And it's very similar. I talk about, and I should have put this up in my last post, when I talk about the ways we build these visuals and how we build these tables of data and we work around the industry with these tables of data such that they can be imported into these different modeling modes and visualized in different ways. And so we can visualize the learning journey, a roadmap to success in a lot of different ways. And this is what the education sector really tries to do. And we work with the strategic pivot sector to figure out how we have that relationship together. And so my apologies for just jumping back a video. Moving on. In the medical records section, we want to do something very similar, only it's going to be we're modeling life experiences. So we're working together on the data tables between industries in a different way. And we're trying to, clinicians and psychologists are trying to work with software engineers and technologists to try to build these different visualizations based upon specifically you're trying to detect cognitive constructs from journals. And this is where you get an advanced diary product. This is the real answer for how you approach the relationship between psychology and gun control. And you have a real screening process for trying to help people get different help that they might need. And we can look at managing this all kinds of different ways as society once this grid is built. But this is a very loaded issue, and we're never going to get an answer for something like gun control and psychology if we're not building this really interactive way of approaching this problem. And then we can appeal apart this issue in so many ways. We'll have people with different levels of strategy. You know, I just make my main focus here about RSA advances to enable Cyberforce design. But again, you could be proposing differences in branches for a specific priority, for a specific year. There are ways we can track all of this through this project management plan, and we'll be able to see how this all evolves much more closely. Another thing we want to tie to this, and I'm getting a little bit off on the medical records video that I want to make this about, so I'm gonna save that. I probably should have put that in the drone. I have a drone video coming up, so I will put that there. And so that's the key thing with medical records is we can get this chemistry working together to implement these very complex systems that we need for our society. And parents care about how we manage a psychology network alongside schools. And that's really what people coming to schools and having a shooting, the only way our current gun control processes stop them is if they already have some sort of an assault charge. Everybody who performs an act of violence that doesn't already have some form of assault charge, we don't have any plan for stopping them from buying a gun. There's no plan for that. And the big thing that I want to point out about psychology is people can get lost. And that's what we want to help them with, is these significant cognitive constructs. I had a suicide attempt that I never thought I never planned to do. You know, it had to do with things that I was feeling, and I didn't realize how lost I was spinning within myself. And so if we can build a very inviting digital diary product where people can get advice, and we make it a point to launch infrastructures like this through strategies like Strategic Pivot, where we have this identity access management grid, and we have professionals coming together on that level to promise you it's the most secure way we can build it. And they're tied into identity products which flow insurance to students, so that if you're going through something difficult and you have a hard time talking to your family about it because you don't understand it yet, or you don't want them to be depressed that you're suicidal or feel like they're failing because you're suicidal, you can go out and you can reach out and you can get help for thinking about those things without having to tell people that you're searching and struggling. It makes it more likely for somebody to feel less overwhelmed about pursuing help. And you know, when Donald Trump, you getting shot in the ear, again, the current gun control processes stopping you from getting shot in the ear by that individual. That only stops that individual if they already have an assault charge. But if the first time they have a breakdown is when they bring a gun to the rally, there's nothing in our gun control processes to detect that. Now, what I'm trying to say, and people think this is uncomfortable, is how do we have some sort of a psychological review process? And who do we make review that, and how often? Which we can build with identity products and psychology systems in an identity access management grid, but we have to get all these systems working together in tandem, and we have to organize our society for this very complex conversation with these various systems coming together. How we organize medical record systems, what kind of reflective journals are going to be useful, what decisions are the right decisions to make? Can we get people on board and say, hey, we're just doing some ink blot tests and we want you to do some random journals intermittently. If you if you own an assault rifle, we want you to do it this often. If you go through 5 years of owning an assault rifle and you only have a psychological review once per month or once per year, maybe you start out at 3 times per year and then it goes down to once per year 5 years later, and you make it through those 5 years, and it's okay if you have an assault rifle, okay? Because we've proven that we trust you now. And at least now, if these people who have assault rifles start shooting different people, we'll have a system in play where it's like, well, what was that person talking about? What were they journaling about? What were they saying with their ink blot tests? What kind of psychology tools can we design so that we can try to help somebody realize, hey, Brandon Helm, when you're saying my dad's family line is going to end with me, do you realize that you have a problem with your self-confidence? Do you understand where that comes from? Because if people ask this question of me, my parents made a small number of mistakes with their divorce, but the big thing as I reviewed it was the way this shooting impacted me and all of the different things that I thought about relative to the Vietnam War and so many different things. And if there was a way that I would have been interacting with journals, there's a chance I could have discovered that. There's no way to address this unless we do something like I'm describing. Everything else is all on the individual to try to vocalize what's going on inside of themselves, no matter how well they understand it. And I'm trying to say there are things that can happen that are painful and charged, and you will spiral trying to figure them out. And it's a very natural process to spiral trying to figure those things out. And if we can help people realize that they're spiraling in a process, in a thought loop, we're more likely to help them overall. And that's what I'm saying is the key to gun control. We have to try to figure out when people end up in these thought loops. One of these thought loops that we're in as society overall right now, I will tell you, and this is a difficult thing, like how do you approach this? When you say something like commie law Harris, you're diffusing a bigger conversation. It is true, because you're making fun of somebody for being a commie rather than trying to understand, why do you believe your system is a stronger system? But if all you're doing is making fun of the other side and acting like they're primitive, you're never going to have that conversation. You're never going to see it. And so that's the thing with medical records that we could work on, and building those systems in these complex ways. You have to make these systems requests for information compatible. And if you think about psychology in these reflective journals, either you're working together as an industry to build these systems and then you're figuring out how you're going to implement the cures around that so that you can have better research. Or you're always micromanaging this, not even micromanaging, I don't know, you're failing to really do the real management you need to in order to conduct the research ethically. I have to say that in the field of psychology for sure, because it's a very complex set of issues. All right, moving on.